I still remember the day my grandfather, Edward Hale, died. It felt like the world had gone quiet in a way I had never known before. His house, the big old place in Europe where I had spent so many happy days, suddenly felt empty. The tall windows let in soft light, but it didn't feel warm anymore. The garden outside, which he used to care for every morning, looked forgotten. I stood in the hallway, staring at the wooden floor, trying to understand how everything could change so quickly. After the funeral, things only got worse. My father, Daniel Hale, called me into the living room. My mother, Sarah, stood beside him, her arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. I thought maybe they would talk about the future, about how we would move forward as a family. But instead, my father looked at me with a cold expression I had never seen before. "You have no share in this inheritance," he said firmly. His words hit me harder than anything else that day. I didn't understand. I was his grandson. I had spent more time with my grandfather than anyone else. I tried to speak, but my voice felt weak. "What do you mean?" I asked. My father didn't answer right away. He just shook his head slightly, as if the decision had already been made long ago. My mother finally spoke, but her voice was just as distant. "It's better this way," she said. That was all. No explanation, no comfort, nothing. Later that same evening, my father told me I had to leave the house. I was only 14 years old. I had no money, no place to go, and no idea what to do next. I packed what little I could into a small bag, my hands shaking the whole time. I kept hoping someone would stop me, that my mother would say something, anything, to change this. But no one did. As I walked out of the house, I turned back one last time. The house looked the same as always, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I stepped onto the quiet street, not knowing where I would go, only knowing that everything I once had was now gone. 7 years passed, but it never felt like time was healing anything. It only made me stronger and quieter. I moved from one place to another, first across small towns in Europe, then eventually to a busy city in America. Life was never easy. I worked long hours doing whatever I could find, washing dishes, carrying boxes, cleaning offices late at night. Some days I earned $30, some days $50 if I was lucky. I lived in small rented rooms, sometimes paying $200 a month, sometimes less when things were bad. There were nights when I skipped meals just to save a few dollars. But I never gave up. I stopped expecting help from anyone. I learned how to survive on my own. I trusted no one, and I kept my past to myself. Still, there were moments, quiet ones, when I would think about my grandfather, Edward Hale. I would remember how he used to smile at me, how he told me stories in that old house in Europe. He was the only person who ever made me feel like I truly belonged somewhere. And every time I thought of him, one question always came back to me: why did my parents push me away so easily after he died? By the time I turned 21, my life had become simple but stable. I was living in a small apartment in America, nothing more than one room with a tiny kitchen and an old bed. The rent was $400 a month, and I had just enough to manage it. I had found a steady job at a warehouse, earning around $500 a week. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. I had built everything on my own, step by step, without anyone's help. One evening, after a long day at work, I came back to my apartment, tired and covered in dust. I was about to sit down when I heard a knock on the door. It was unexpected. No one ever came to see me. I opened the door slowly. 2 men stood outside. They were dressed neatly in suits, which immediately made me uneasy. One of them, a tall man with gray hair, looked at me carefully before speaking. "Are you the grandson of Edward Hale?" he asked. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I hadn't heard my grandfather's name spoken by anyone in years. "Yes," I finally answered, my voice low and unsure. The 2 men exchanged a brief glance. Then the second man, who carried a black folder, stepped forward. "We are lawyers," he said. "We have been trying to find you for a long time." I felt confused. "Find me? Why?" The first man reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. It looked old, slightly worn at the edges, as if it had been waiting for years. "This was left for you," he said, "by your grandfather." My hands froze. I took the envelope slowly. My name was written on it in a familiar handwriting. I recognized it instantly. It was his. For a moment, everything around me faded. The small apartment, the noise from the street, even the 2 men standing in front of me, none of it mattered. All I could see was that envelope. "May we come in?" one of the lawyers asked politely. I stepped aside without saying a word. They entered and sat down, while I remained standing, staring at the letter in my hands. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it carefully and began to read. "If you are reading this, it means things did not go the way I hoped. I know the truth about what they might do. Do not trust anyone who stood against you. You were always meant to have what is mine. Go to the bank. My safety deposit box holds everything. And remember, I believed in you when no one else did." I stopped reading. My chest felt tight, and I had to sit down. For years, I had believed that I had been forgotten, that I meant nothing to anyone. But now, holding that letter, I realized something I had never expected. My grandfather hadn't abandoned me. He had planned something. I looked up at the lawyers. "What is in the box?" I asked. They exchanged another glance before answering. "We believe it contains documents related to his estate," one of them said carefully. "But we cannot be certain until you open it." "Why didn't anyone tell me about this before?" I asked, a mix of anger and confusion in my voice. "We tried," the older lawyer replied. "But your family made it difficult. They claimed you could not be located. It took us years to track you down." That answer made something inside me shift. For the first time, I started to see things differently. Maybe what happened 7 years ago wasn't as simple as I thought. "Where is this bank?" I asked. "In America," the lawyer said. "Not far from here. We can go tomorrow morning." I nodded slowly, still trying to process everything. My life had been simple just hours ago. Now, suddenly, everything felt uncertain again. After the lawyers left, I sat alone in my small apartment, holding the letter in my hands. I read it again and again, each time understanding it a little more. My grandfather knew. He knew something was wrong. He knew I might be pushed away, and he made sure to leave something behind for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the bank, the safety deposit box, and what could be inside it. But more than that, I kept thinking about one thing. If my grandfather had left everything for me, then why did my parents lie? And what were they trying to hide? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, even before the sun had fully risen. I barely slept that night. My mind kept going over my grandfather's letter again and again. Every word felt important, like a warning I had ignored for too long. I got dressed quickly, wearing the cleanest clothes I had, even though they were still simple. This was not just another day of work, this felt like the day my life was about to change. The two lawyers arrived right on time. They greeted me politely, and we left together without wasting any time. The drive to the bank felt longer than it actually was. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, watching the streets of America pass by. People were walking to work, cars filled the roads, and everything looked normal. But inside me, nothing felt normal. When we finally arrived, the bank stood tall and quiet, its glass doors reflecting the morning light. It looked expensive, the kind of place where people with real money walked in without worry. I hesitated for a second before stepping inside. As soon as we entered, one of the staff members greeted the lawyers and led us further in. After a few minutes, a man in a dark suit approached us. He introduced himself as Mr. Collins, the bank manager. He looked serious, the kind of man who noticed everything. "Are you the grandson of Edward Hale?" he asked, looking directly at me. "Yes," I replied. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Please, come with me," he said. We followed him through a hallway and into a quieter part of the bank. Before we reached the room with the safety deposit boxes, he stopped and turned to me. His expression changed, becoming more careful. "I need to tell you something," he said in a low voice. I felt my chest tighten. "What is it?" He glanced briefly at the lawyers, then back at me. "Someone already tried to access your grandfather's safety deposit box." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Tried?" I finally asked. "Yes," he said. "They came with documents, claiming they had the right. But something didn't feel right. The signatures did not match our records. We refused access." My hands slowly clenched into fists. I didn't need to ask who it was. I already knew. "Did they say who they were?" I asked. Mr. Collins paused before answering. "They claimed to be family." That was enough. A quiet anger started building inside me, not loud, not explosive, but deep and steady. For 7 years, I had struggled alone, believing I had nothing. And all this time, They had been trying to take what was never theirs. Mr. Collins opened the door to a secure room and led us inside. The room was small, with rows of metal boxes locked behind thick doors. It felt cold and silent, like it was holding secrets that no one else knew. He walked to one of the boxes and carefully unlocked it. Then he placed it on the table in front of me. "This is it," he said. For a moment, no one spoke. I stared at the box. It was simple, nothing special on the outside. But inside could be everything. "Take your time," one of the lawyers said gently. I nodded, though my hands were already moving. I reached forward and slowly opened it. Inside were several documents, neatly arranged. Some were sealed, others were already visible. I picked up the first paper and began reading. At first, I didn't fully understand what I was looking at. But as I continued, the truth became clear. These were property papers. Houses in Europe, apartments in America, land, investments, and ownership documents. Each one listed the same name. My name. I quickly picked up another document, then another. Bank accounts, financial records, legal confirmations. Every single one confirmed the same thing. Everything my grandfather owned had been left to me. Not to my father. Not to my mother. To me. My breathing became uneven as the realization settled in. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was clear, official, and undeniable. "He left everything to you," one of the lawyers said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. I sat down slowly, still holding the papers. My mind went back to that day 7 years ago, the cold look in my father's eyes, the silence of my mother, the words that forced me out of the house. "You have no share in this inheritance." They had lied. Not only lied, but tried to erase me completely. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When I opened them again, something inside me had changed. The confusion was gone. The doubt was gone. In its place, there was clarity. I carefully placed the documents back into the box and looked at Mr. Collins. "I want to secure everything," I said firmly. He nodded. "Of course. I want all accounts reviewed, all access restricted. No one touches anything without my approval." "It will be done," he replied. I turned to the lawyers. "I also want full control transferred immediately. Every property, every account." They both nodded. "We'll begin the process right away." I stood up, feeling a strange sense of calm. For years, I had lived with nothing, believing I had been left behind. But now, I knew the truth. My grandfather hadn't left me with nothing. He had left me everything. And now, it was finally in my hands. As we left the bank, I took one last look at the building. The morning light was brighter now, reflecting off the glass. Everything outside looked the same as before. But my life was no longer the same. And this time, I wasn't the helpless 14-year-old being pushed out of a house. This time, I was the one in control. The next day didn't feel real. Everything had changed so quickly that my mind was still trying to catch up. But one thing was clear, I was no longer the person they had thrown out 7 years ago. I had the truth now. And more than that, I had control. Early that morning, I spoke with the lawyers again. We sat in a quiet office, going over every detail of my grandfather Edward Hale's estate. There were accounts spread across Europe and America, all connected in ways I didn't fully understand before. But now, every line, every number, carried my name. "I want everything locked," I said firmly. "No withdrawals, no payments, nothing goes through without my approval." The lawyers nodded. "We can freeze all outgoing transactions immediately," one of them said. "Do it," I replied. Within hours, the process began. Accounts were restricted, cards were blocked, and access was cut off. Every dollar, every pound, was now under my control. It felt strange, having that kind of power after years of struggling just to survive, but I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about truth. Later that day, I learned something important. My Aunt Emily, my father Daniel Hale's sister, was getting married. The wedding was being held in a large hall in America, and it was planned to be a grand event. Expensive decorations, a long guest list, and bills reaching nearly $150,000. And all of it was being paid using the estate that actually belonged to me. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I made a decision. I told the lawyers to make sure every payment connected to that event was stopped immediately. They didn't question me. By the evening, everything was set. I arrived at the wedding quietly. The hall was bright, filled with music and laughter. People were dressed in expensive clothes, holding drinks, smiling like everything in the world was perfect. For a second, I stood at the entrance, watching it all. It felt like I was looking at a life I used to be part of, but no longer belonged to. No one noticed me at first. My father stood near the center of the hall, talking confidently with guests. My mother was beside him, smiling politely. My Aunt Emily looked happy, surrounded by friends, unaware of what was about to happen. Then the first sign of trouble appeared. One of the staff members rushed toward the event organizer, whispering something urgently. The organizer's face changed instantly. Moments later, another person walked in, holding a phone. "The payment didn't go through," he said loudly. Confusion spread. "That's not possible," someone replied. "Try again." We did. All the cards are declined. The music slowly faded as more people began to notice. The calm atmosphere turned into quiet panic. I stepped forward. That's when my father saw me. His face went pale. "You," he said, his voice low and uncertain. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept walking, slowly, until I stood in front of him. Before he could say anything else, another voice spoke from behind me. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Collins, the bank manager, said clearly as he entered the hall with the lawyers. "There seems to be some confusion regarding the payments for this event." All eyes turned toward him. He held a set of documents in his hand. "The accounts being used to fund this wedding have been reviewed. They belong to the rightful heir of Edward Hale's estate." The room fell completely silent. My father looked at him, then back at me, as if he already knew what was coming but didn't want to believe it. Mr. Collins continued, "And that heir is him." He gestured toward me. For a moment, no one moved. My mother's face lost all color. My Aunt Emily slowly sat down, unable to process what she was hearing. Guests began whispering, trying to understand what was happening. "This is not true," my father said suddenly, his voice shaking. "There must be a mistake." I finally spoke. "No," I said calmly. "There's no mistake." He looked at me, his expression a mix of anger and fear. "You had no share," he said, almost desperately, repeating the same words from 7 years ago. I took a step closer. "That's what you told me," I replied. "But the truth is, everything was always mine." I could see it in his eyes, the moment he realized he had lost control. The lies, the decisions, everything he had done to push me away, it had all come back to him. "The accounts are frozen," one of the lawyers added. "No further payments can be processed." The wedding had stopped completely. No music, no celebration, just silence and shock. I looked around the room one last time. These were the same people who had watched me disappear without asking questions, without caring where I went. But now, they knew the truth. I turned back to my father. "For 7 years," I said quietly, "I lived with nothing. And all this time, you knew." He didn't answer. He couldn't. I didn't stay any longer. There was nothing left to say. As I walked toward the exit, I felt something lift from my chest, a weight I had carried for years without even realizing it. Outside, the night air felt calm. For the first time since I was 14, I wasn't running, I wasn't surviving, I was finally free. And this time, I walked away not with nothing, but with everything that was always mine.